from my understanding, you guys did a sting. You essentially put up pictures of minors, or you did a way to tracked pedophiles to see if they would want to purchase the kids, and a lot of people ended up actually showing up to purchase kids, and you guys arrested almost 13 of them. Is that true?
I think it was 16.
Every time I turn on my phone or the TV, it feels like the world's falling apart. The news is full of chaos, and if that's all you ever see, it's easy to believe everything's just getting worse. But that's not what I'm seeing behind the scenes. In real life, in our communities, I'm watching God move like I've never seen before. I've seen lives restored, churches growing, revival happening at business events, people stepping out in faith, and God giving dreams and visions, calling people to rise up and make a difference. And that's why I started Transforming Communities, because I want to show you what God is actually doing right now. I want to introduce you to my friends, people who are stepping up, taking risks, and transforming their cities for the kingdom. So if you're tired of bad news and you've been wondering if God still moves, He does, and these stories prove it. To support what we're doing and to hear more stories like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to be notified every time a new podcast drops, just click the bell icon next to the subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump into the Transforming Communities podcast. This episode is brought to you by Helping Captives. You know, it's crazy how many people don't realize that human trafficking isn't just somewhere else. It happens right here in our own communities. Helping Captives is a faith-based anti-trafficking organization that exists to provide freedom, hope, and opportunity to survivors of sex trafficking across the United States. They do this through their different services such as emergency and stabilization, 24/7 around-the-clock care, professional counseling, and much more. If you're a survivor of sex trafficking and need help, or you're wanting to support a survivor's journey, take the first step at helpingcaptives.org. That's helpingcaptives.org. I recently sat down with the Chief of Police from Liberty Lake, Dammon Simmons, and it turned into a really honest, eye-opening conversation. What stood out right away was his genuine heart for women who have been trafficked and how clearly he understands what trafficking actually looks like in our communities. We had some fun banter about speeding tickets, but the part that really stuck with me was his commitment to training officers to have compassion, to recognize that women caught in trafficking isn't always criminal, she's often a victim who needs help, support, and dignity. Chief Simmons leads with humility, a willingness to learn, and a real desire to protect people, not just enforce laws. So now, on to my conversation with Chief Damon Simmons. All right, man. Thanks for coming on the Transforming Communities podcast, Mr. Chief Damon Simmons. That's a pretty cool title that you got there, and you have a really important job. And you're in Liberty Lake, which is just right down the street. And something really incredible happened recently in the fight against sex trafficking. But before we get into that, I'm curious, and I think a lot of the listeners are going to be curious. What's your background? How did you get into law enforcement? Where did you grow up? And then, how did you know you were called into law enforcement?
Oh, boy. So I'm originally from Waco, Texas. I grew up in Waco, Texas. My entire, juvenile life up until the time I was a young man. I had somewhat of a unique childhood because my parents were working middle class parents. We lived in a great neighborhood. Actually, a cool story. Actually, one of the first truly integrated neighborhoods in Waco, Texas, where I'm from. So unique background. Grew up around some great people in a great situation. But both of my parents worked. I was an only child. And so both of my parents worked. And so even though I spent a majority of my time in our neighborhood where I grew up, again, great middle class, neighborhood, there was often times that I'd have to spend with some relatives, and specifically my aunties. And the neighborhood that they lived in wasn't quite as good as mine. And so I think it was a blessing in disguise, because what I learned to do is navigate different worlds. Okay. I saw the good and the bad in people. I saw, how criminal activity affected people. I saw how drugs affected people. I mean, early on, I saw how prostitution affected people. And so just kind of growing up in both of those worlds where I was able to, to people watch and to see, again, the good and bad, that battle between good and evil, and get to go home to a comfortable bed and good parents and, 2-parent household. It was just kind of a unique situation for me.
Yeah.
And so early on in life, I knew after seeing how evil and how things like drugs and domestic violence and gangs and all those bad things, how those affect people. And so that coupled with the fact that I had a neighbor, hello, Holly Holstein, he's still a friend of mine. He was a law enforcement officer in Waco, Texas for, I don't know, maybe 40 years. A long time. And his daughter and I, rest in peace, were good friends and growing up. And he told me early on that, hey, you're gonna be a cop when you grow up. So consistently, you're going to be a cop when you grow up. So that kind of stuck with me, and that coupled with the fact that I was able to see what the bad things, that effect that had on society, that led me to law enforcement.
One of the things you just said, I'm kind of curious about, just because of the work that we do. You said even at a young age, you saw how prostitution affected people. Do you mind opening up about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. An area one of the areas that I grew up in, as far as being away from home, one of my aunties was an area that was a project housing unit in Waco, Texas. Pretty rough area, pretty rough. And I remember,
this isn't where Chip and Joanna Gaines live.
Yeah, this is where Chip and Joanna. Yeah,
different part
of Waco. Yeah, different part of Waco. Spending a lot of time there and having family members there, but having that protection of a kid and no one messing with you as a kid. We did kid things. We'd ride our bikes to the store. We'd play in the parks until it was unsafe to do so. But I saw a lot of things. I remember seeing, for the very first time as a young man, seeing an adult male get shot in the head. And so those things kind of stick with you. But also, again, we did kid things. And I remember riding up to a convenience store, walking up to the convenience store. And there was a lot of criminal activity around this convenience store, around the housing project units. And one of those crimes that was pretty prevalent was prostitution. And
how old are you?
Oh man, I think I had to be,
like, you're rolling up on a bicycle.
Oh yeah, we're 6, 7, 8 years old. This is preteen.
Okay.
Preteen years. Even seeing how some of the prostitutes and the bottoms and the pimps interacted with the kids, there was some grooming there. And I've been blessed enough. God's blessed me with this. I've always had this sense of danger, and when I think people are trying to get over on me or groom me or push me in a direction where that's not conducive to my health and wellness. And so early on, I kind of noticed, and it was like, hey, something's wrong with this. I remember seeing pimps beat up women, but specifically, I remember understanding the news stories at a young age that I was hearing about prostitutes being badly beaten or killed. So I understood
you're hearing that from the street side.
I'm hearing that from the street side. So I actually saw the crimes occurring. I saw the pimps, I saw the prostitutes, but then you'd hear on the news where there's a prostitute found dead. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how many kids understand that at 6, 7, or 8, but I understood that. I understood exactly what a prostitute was at a young age. I was also fortunate enough to have parents that taught me at an early age that that's bad. Stay away from those people. Be careful. Don't go here after a certain time. You're allowed to go here, but you're not allowed to go there. And so, having that, again, that almost that sixth sense that I believe that the Lord has given me. Also, fantastic parents. I love you, Dad. Rest in peace. That's always there. Was always there to talk to me, to teach me, the ins and outs of life and common sense and the street smarts and those things. I was just blessed in that aspect. But again, I was super blessed because even though I was exposed to that environment, I didn't have to live in that environment. I got to go home to great parents and, a great household and great neighbors and great friends. And so, again, I think that was a blessing, especially in the job that I do now, because I believe what that has done is led me to have the ability to relate to a lot of different types of people. And that has really helped me in this career.
I was going to say, one of the things when we first were, we've had a big meeting about anti-trafficking, and you were there. One of the things that I distinctly remember was your compassion for the women. And oftentimes that's not necessarily the first thought from somebody that might be coming out of trafficking, that police chief or somebody's like kind of have compassion on me and maybe look at me as somebody that needs help, not necessarily as like the problem. Did that come from just kind of growing up around that?
I think that started, and not just specifically talking about human trafficking victims. I think my upbringing has led me to be a compassionate person, period.
Okay.
As far as law enforcement, I started my career in Great Falls, Montana at the Great Falls Police Department.
How do you end up from Waco to Montana? That's a big difference.
That is.
I guess Texas and Montana, I
had somewhat of after high school, I had somewhat a unique path. I moved from Central Texas to West Texas, which is a culture shock all in itself. Mm-hmm. First time I ever saw mountains or lived in the mountains. And then I went from West Texas to Montana after I joined the United States Air Force.
Okay.
And so after I served my term in the United States Air Force, I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to get a job with the Great Falls Police Department. That was where I started in law enforcement. But there was a detective, he's now retired, that he trained me a little bit. He kind of filled in when my normal FTO wasn't, or field training officer wasn't there a couple of times. And I can see it like it's today, and I tell this story often when in my training, especially some leadership training that I provide to other law enforcement officers around the country. There was a talk about compassion. And one of the things that he told me as an officer who had, at the time I maybe had a month on. And it was almost that father-son or that grandfather-grandson talk. And, he pointed at me when he said it. Says, you always remember as you move throughout your career that you're going to see a lot of things. And a lot of things are going to become routine to you. They're going to be routine. Yeah. You're going to see a lot of people that are victimized in a lot of different ways. And you're going to see people that have been victimized. For instance, say their purse was stolen out of their car. You're going to see that a lot in your career. And for you, it's just going to be another call. Right? It's going to be another call for you. But for that individual person on that specific call, it may be the worst thing that has happened to them ever in their life. So you have to maintain compassion. Do not ever, ever become compassion fatigued.
Wow.
And that has stuck with me.
How do you keep yourself from becoming compassion fatigued when all you see is probably the worst of people or people at their worst moment oftentimes?
I think the biggest thing is being there in that moment. And looking at everyone that you deal with as a person more than, I don't want to say another customer, but, just looking at people as, you have to care. And to be completely honest, in this job, you can lose that really easily.
I can imagine.
We deal with some bad people. And so I think, and it depends on the person too. Depends on the officer. But I think it's important that we not only maintain that compassion for the people that we consider victims, but also sometimes for the people that we consider suspects. Because although they're considered suspects maybe in a specific crime, in the big scheme of things, they may be a victim themselves. That may be the catalyst or the variable that has led them to criminal behavior somewhere down the line. There's been a failure somewhere in our system, whether we're talking about educational, mental health, health, family. Yeah. Often there's a failure somewhere. And so we have to remember that we have to have that compassion too. Yeah. To a certain extent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, you've talked a lot in your language about faith, the Lord God. What is it? How has your faith and your personal values really shaped the way you lead?
First and foremost, in order to develop as a leader, from the very beginning, you have to understand yourself. You have to know your values. You have to know your personal vision. You have to know, your mission for yourself, not for your organization, not for your employees, for yourself. Self-development is the first stage in leadership. And so for me, understanding myself and developing myself when I even thought that I wanted to take a step towards becoming a leader. And I'm talking about like before I even tested for corporal, I knew the importance of that. A lot of that was developed, again, from people watching. I had the fortune of being in the United States Air Force. I had the fortune of, working for, this is my third law enforcement agency. But early on, people watching and figuring out from the different leaders that not only led me as far as, me being their subordinate, but also, having friends, especially in the military, that were having, different things happen and different issues and different incidents and things like that. And looking at leaders and saying, trying to figure out, where they're coming from, like, what are their values? Mm-hmm. How they look at people, how they treat people, what works, what doesn't, those successes, those failures, and it's just kind of watching throughout the years. And then understanding, again, my own personal values, the things that I find to be to be important. Okay. And I just said honest. That was one of the things that popped up in my head, honesty, integrity, compassion, all of these things that I find are important and that describe me as a person, understanding that first. Once I understand that, then I can I developed my leadership style.
Okay.
Plural.
Yeah.
Because not just one leadership style works in all situations. And so my values were and still are super important in how I approach leadership today, both with my organization and my family and our community. It's super important. It's one of the foundations.
And faith plays a part of that.
Absolutely.
For you? Okay.
Absolutely.
When did faith become important to you?
Since I was, ever since I was a kid. Both of my parents worked. So my experience in the church was started with a neighbor. From that moment on, my faith has always been super, super important for me.
Your neighbor's the one that introduced you to Christ?
My neighbor was the one that introduced me to Christ, yes. Which, and to this day I can't. I remember I was so young when she passed away, and I can't remember her name. I can remember her picking me up. I can remember her car. It was a maroon Bonneville, older Chevy Bonneville. I can remember her face. I could just remember it like it was yesterday. And to this day, sometimes it haunts me that I can never remember her name. My parents can't remember, or my dad's passed away, but my mom can't remember her name either.
It's the details.
Yeah,
it's
the detail.
The wife's asking all the details. You go, I don't know, but I remember the car, the color, the VIN number, title, all the stuff about the car.
I remember where we sat in church. I remember going to Sunday school first and then coming out. And so, that was from the beginning. And also the fact that even though my parents worked, my dad worked 3 jobs to support us. My mom worked rotating shifts, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. But they still had faith, even though they weren't able to do what they.
Was this lady like a grandma that was
No,
next door?
she was a neighbor. I don't think she had family.
Okay.
I think that's why she was drawn to me. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to answer that question.
Just interesting
because I was 5 or 6 years old at that time.
It's just interesting to me because so many times people are just nervous to invite people to church, but so many people will if you. Invite them to go,
definitely, yeah.
And
definitely.
that's what I'm hearing is like your neighbor lady's like, hey, do you want to go to church? And probably went and talked to your parents, and they were like, yeah, she's legit.
Oh yeah. She was, and like I said, I can right now I can take you to our house on Parrott, right off of Colcourt in Waco. As a matter, it's funny that we're talking about this because I went home last summer and I drove by our house and looked at our house. Just the memories. I've always wondered if I'll ever remember, or my mom would ever remember her name. Because at the time, she was probably, she had to be pushing 80 at the time, maybe a little older. She was older.
Okay.
Yeah. Super nice lady.
Man.
Yeah.
So she might be the one
every Sunday.
Waiting for you up there.
Yeah.
That is neat, man. Nothing like a praying grandma. And
super nice lady. And it's interesting because where I grew up, and I told you about our neighborhood, she wasn't the only. I don't want to say elderly, but at the time that's what they were, elderly female.
Yeah.
Who I had positive interactions with.
Okay.
And that the few kids that were in our neighborhood that guided us and helped us and kept us, kind of kept us along with our parents, kind of that, the old adage, it takes a village to raise a kid. And that was kind of still the mind state when I was growing up. And so the neighbors were, I believe the neighbors were a little more involved, especially some of the older ones who liked kids.
Yeah.
Because we did have some older people in our neighborhood that didn't. Don't ride on my sidewalk, and so, but again, just blessed to have a neighborhood like that and have that involvement from our neighbors, the elderly gentleman that lived across the street, Mr. Otto. I talk about him all the time, and with my mom, I'll never forget him, and just that positive interaction.
Yeah.
And again, Holly Holstein, who was a little younger at the time, but a law enforcement officer, but super involved in making sure that all the kids were moving along in the right direction. We're super blessed.
That's awesome, man. One of the things that I've been curious to ask you, especially knowing that you're from Texas, I've got some friends that have moved down there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you go to Austin, Texas, the wife wants to go to Waco, Texas now because everybody wants to go see the Chip and Joanna Gaines stuff. But the thing that I've always noticed about Texas, and I don't want to incriminate myself, but the speed limit's not really the speed limit.
It's funny that you asked me.
And then you get up here, and I'm going, bruh, I love that you guys are like getting pedophiles.
Yeah.
Why are you on us? Why are you on me so much about like how fast I'm going on the freeway? You know what I mean? And then you're from Texas, and the speed limit is not the speed limit down there. We will enjoy going to Texas because we can rent cars
Yeah,
and go have a good
yeah,
time.
yep, yep.
And then up here, I swear, if you're going 7 over, they're on you.
They're on you. No, it's funny.
Walk me through that because I'm like, come on,
I don't know
man.
I don't know where that came from, and so I was down in San Antonio. My business is called Leo First Line. I do leadership management and supervision, education, and consulting. And so I was down there at one of their local agencies in the San Antonio area, having a leadership class, management and supervision class as well. And I decided I was going to go early, and I was going to drive up to Waco and see my sister, and just I hadn't been back in 15 years. Okay. I mean, I hadn't been back in 15 years. It had been a long time. And so I'm in a rental, and I hit the interstate, and I have some car trouble, so I had to go back to the airport, trade the rental in, and then drive. Now by that I left super early, so there wasn't a lot of traffic on the interstate. Had the car trouble. By the time I get my new car and I hit the interstate, there's a little more traffic. It's a Sunday. I don't know how long it normally takes to get from Waco to San Antonio or San Antonio to Waco. I had an idea growing up. Things have changed a little bit.
The
city limits,
technically, Austin to Waco is about an hour.
it's about an
And
hour,
then
right?
San Antonio's on the other side.
Yeah. So it's actually about 3.5 hours,
Yeah, it's gotta
3:45.
be. Yeah.
I didn't have a choice in this because there was so much traffic. So you had to, it was either drive or get ran over. There was a lot of traffic. I mean, there was almost bumper to bumper traffic from Waco to Austin. Waco to, from San Antonio to Waco. And if you've been down there lately, you'll know that, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It is almost one city now, San Antonio to Waco. It's changed a lot, right?
With a few Buc-ee's along the road.
Yeah. And so it was right at 3 hours, and I'm in Waco. And so I remember telling my sister, hey, I'm leaving. I had some car trouble. I'm on my way now. And when I drove up, she's kind of looking at me and she goes, "What time did you leave?" I go, "Hey, I just had to put the cruise control on and drive with everybody else." And I was like, we were going really, really, really fast. And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, even the police, they're passing me." And I'm like, "Hey, I mean,
And
I
they
know how
don't
fast I'm
care.
going." Yeah,
It was like in New York, it's like that. In
Yeah,
Texas, like that.
definitely, yeah.
So I'm going, hey, when can we bring that?
When can we bring it?
When
Yeah,
can we bring
yeah.
that here?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Because some
don't
of
know.
us, enjoy going fast.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think we have the transportation infrastructure yet to do that. I mean, our roads are still super narrow, especially like I-90 and everything. But yeah, I mean, you go to. I remember being in Tampa, and it's like, hey, man, we're averaging 100. Like, and if you don't, it's like you're getting ran over. And so.
Why that's always just been one thing I've just always wanted to ask a police officer. Why up here does it seem like they're so sticklers on speed, but you go travel anywhere else and it seems like they kind of major on the main things and traffic is not necessarily the.
I think it just goes to. I think we have super safe roads statistically if you look at it because of that. Running traffic does a couple of things.
Okay.
And it may be, well, there are things that the common citizen probably wouldn't consider. First and foremost, when you make traffic stops, theoretically, according to some past studies, you're preventing traffic accidents. And if you look at our traffic, if you look at the data, we are in a pretty good position, I believe, because of the fact that we do. Those 3 E's that prevent, right? The education, enforcement, and engineering. Those things that prevent traffic accidents. If you look in other places, I mean, there's some horrific crashes. I mean, if you,
I don't even know if people in Atlanta, Georgia, know how to drive.
Oh well, no.
Every time I go down there, I'm like, there's bumpers all inside of the road.
Just look at social media. I mean, look at the collisions and some of the things that you see on TikTok and Instagram out of Texas. We just mentioned Texas. And I see it. I'm like, dude, that was a horrible crash. The technology in vehicles has changed quite a bit. But I mean, the fact is, plastic and fiberglass and metal, they don't do too good once you reach certain speeds. Another thing that we have to remember is, it's physics. When you're going that fast, and your car suddenly stops, your organs and everything in your body, they don't. They're still traveling at that speed, and so there's the science behind that, and so I think as long as we can keep people driving prudently and safely, and I think we'll see less horrific, fatal, and serious injury crashes. And that's why. That's the first reason. The second reason is visibility. All right. So if I'm making traffic stops around your neighborhood, the criminal element knows when they see the flashing light that there's law enforcement around, right? We're there. That's kind of the signal. Hey, look, just to let you know, we're here. If you want to come here, you can come on. All right, but we're going to catch you. Okay. If you want to come to this neighborhood or our city and commit crimes, come on in. We're happy to catch you, right? But you see that we're here. We're not hiding, and so that's another reason why.
So it's not so much that they care that much that you're going 10 over. There's more reasons behind
There's more reasons. I mean, if you think about it.
Because I'm going how you learn how to drive the car best is you got to go test it out.
You got to test it out. Yeah.
That's why you didn't get in an accident when you were in Waco, because you knew how to.
You know how to drive it. But I mean, if you think about the number of contacts that we have, like the actual amount of traffic stops that we have versus the amount of traffic infractions that are written, it's pretty minimal.
Because you guys are going, hey, there's multiple reasons why we're doing this.
There's multiple reasons.
We always would think, it's because they need money.
No,
and they're trying to get tickets.
It's not a lot of money.
Okay, so that's
in the big scheme of things.
Well, literally, you have that thought process is like, this is just the way that they fund themselves.
Yeah, no, we
don't. That's not really it.
No, I mean, the percentage. I'll use us as an example.
Yeah,
the percentage of just one traffic ticket that we get is so minimal. It's not going to fund anything. Okay. I mean, we're talking, and I can't remember the number, but you're talking for one traffic infraction. If it's $150, I mean, you're talking a couple of bucks.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
The rest of that goes to the state. So
then does the state tell you they need you to get a certain amount of tickets?
No, we can't. That's illegal. No. And so it's super minimal. So. The amount, like I said, the amount of money that we get for a traffic infraction.
I just had to ask.
It's
I was just something I've always wondered.
No,
so the reality is the chances of you getting out of a ticket are higher if you just tell the truth and you're not if you get pulled over and you're like lying. But you're going, all right, now you're annoying me. I'm just going to give you a ticket. Versus just somebody keeping it real, going, hey,
I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. And to be completely honest, from my experience, a lot of infractions, a lot of tickets are given just because of lack of cooperation.
Interesting.
I mean, I think there's a lot of times where officers have the intent on just going up and saying, hey, please slow down. But, before you get to the window, you're getting berated. What did I do? Hey, pig, and all those things. And then everything that people they see on social media, and they have their phone out and they want to make this what was going to be maybe a 2-minute traffic stop. Now it's a 10-minute traffic stop because, we're monkey see, monkey do. We're doing what we see on social media, and then it's like, I guess I'm gonna write you a ticket now. I mean, if we're gonna go through all this, you're getting a ticket, and so
you put this on yourself.
But I've seen it over and over and over. Well, I was just gonna give them a warning, but.
Got it.
That attitude, it's like,
Yeah, so. I mean, because we're looking through one lens.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear from the other side. You're like, no, there's a reason that we end up doing that. Okay, we talked about the thing that I'm like, always questioning about law enforcement going, hey, this is kind of annoying that they do this, but then there's the other stuff that you guys do that's incredible. That I'm going, hey, this is amazing. When I hear a story of you taking down like a pedophile ring and stuff like that, we're like, hey, this is awesome. I want to move more into that because that was just me just wanting to know, hey, why when I travel, are we able to just kind of like do our thing? And then up here, they're just like, man, you're going 70 into 60, and boom, they got you.
Then you got those places that's the opposite of that. I mean, you go 2, 3, 4, 5 over, you're getting a ticket. It's like.
Okay,
wow,
yeah, I've never experienced
give me
that.
give me like a little leeway.
It's usually
Yeah.
from my experience, it's usually going from the highway into a small city and then
yeah.
back the other side. They are on it.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're just like,
yeah.
hey, we're not playing.
It's all situational. It depends on the agencies and expectations and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. So I always thought it's because this is how they fund the police department.
No.
So they're like, I'm going to get them.
No, that's not how police departments are funded. if we wouldn't have any officers, if that's how folks, we wouldn't have resources and officers. And no, that is not a good revenue source for us.
Well, we hear that you guys are underfunded, and that was definitely one of the conversations that I had. We were hearing about some of the reasons why some of the anti-trafficking stuff or the massage parlors or stuff back in the day, there wasn't enough law enforcement to really like tackle the issue, and so that so you hear the stories of like, hey, they're underfunded, and so
I mean it's a bigger issue than I think the public knows.
Yeah.
And so it's super difficult to investigate and to tackle when you just don't have the resources to address those specific issues. Yeah.
So speaking of that, I want to get into something really cool that I think happens in your area, and you guys would love to get the details more. But from my understanding, you guys did a sting with people that you essentially put up pictures of minors, or you did a way to tracked pedophiles to see if they would want to purchase the kids, and a lot of people ended up actually showing up to purchase kids, and you guys arrested almost 13 of them. Is that true?
I think it was 16. Yeah, it was a multi-agency operation that was basically planned and operated by one of our local task forces.
Okay.
Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force, or Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and which our detectives are part of. And it was a super successful operation. I believe the final number was 16, 16 arrests. So super supportive compared to the target number that was identified at the beginning, and I can't remember, but it was a lot less than 16. So super supportive. Super successful operation, and we're proud that number one, that we were able to provide a home base for that operation, and all worked out perfectly without any issues or any dangers to the community and or anyone hurt or injured. So yeah, super supportive. Super successful. I keep saying supportive. Excuse me. Super successful operation.
What was something that kind of shocked you? Was there anything that shocked you about
no,
how
there
many
was,
people showed up, or
no,
how
there
many
wasn't,
people were interested in purchasing minors?
No, there wasn't really anything that shocked me.
That's sad that doesn't shock you.
Yeah, and maybe not for me, because that was my world for 8 years.
Okay.
When I worked for the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, specifically when I was a detective and an investigator, that was my world. I was on the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. As a matter of fact, my move to investigator in 2009 was specifically to set up the child sexual exploitation program at the Spokane County Sheriff's Office. I'm proud to say that I actually won an award from the sheriff, former Sheriff Ozzie Konezovich, for establishing that program. And so, I did a lot of work in that arena, and I did a lot of undercover chat as an investigator, had a plethora of arrests, in regards to cases, in the sexual exploitation of children world, that technology facilitated world. So no, nothing really surprised me when it came to that. Again, I was just super excited that we were able to apprehend so many. That was a lot for us. Like I said, if you look at the target number going in, and that end number, we were super excited that it was such a successful operation.
Why do you think you guys doing stings on trying to catch pedophiles is so important?
It lets people know that law enforcement is watching. Like, we're there. We're there to protect the people who can't protect themselves. And we're going to try our hardest to identify those who are victimizing our children, vulnerable adults, and anyone else that they're trying to victimize. We are watching. And I'll be completely honest, it's a super difficult. Those are super difficult, or can be super difficult investigations, but we're conducting them. And so, if you're out there and you're doing that, just understand that it is a world that we know what's going on, and just like any other criminal activity, we investigate that, and if you're caught, we're going to hold you accountable for violating the law and victimizing people.
That was one of the questions I was curious about. There's a few in that. What ended up happening to the 16? Like, I'm just wondering from laws and a perspective of that. I'm like, did they kind of get a slap on the wrist? You know what I mean? No. Like, is there things that we need to do better and laws that we need to tighten up? Yeah. What ends up happening? Because I remember talking to Ozzy about this when I was real young, getting into this. He was so frustrated. They do a sting, they get some people, and they just be like right back on the street, and he would just be so frustrated. Yeah.
So I can't comment specifically on any of those cases because I'm sure a majority of those cases are still getting adjudicated.
Okay.
But yeah, it can be a challenge sometime. I can tell you that for me personally, the reason why I enjoyed working those types of cases, arresting people who were, again, victimizing children and vulnerable adults and women, was because I felt that if I worked hard enough and I worked with the prosecutors and I worked with the courts and the victim advocates, and we got a sentence that was, acceptable, I felt there was a satisfaction to that. I felt like, I've accomplished something. I should take a picture of it. It's hanging up in my office now. I've had it ever since I was a detective. But I have a little plaque, and it's a quote by a former New York City police officer. I think like one of their commanders, and it says, "Always remember that we do God's work." And I kept that on my desk as a detective, and I felt that every time that there was a conviction, or I had a good arrest, or I was able to rescue a child from a bad situation, or even identify a child and get them out of it. Not just here, because you got to remember we're talking about technology facilitated crimes against children. So there's often that you may identify a child that lives in Texas or Florida or Nebraska or New York, and you can work with those agencies to get those children out of bad situations. So it's such a it's gratifying, I believe. Unlike some cases like property crimes and some of the things that you can investigate sometimes, it just feels like you're making such an impact. Because again, you're talking about, for the most part, sometimes you're talking about people who just can't protect themselves.
Yep. Yeah, you're protecting the innocence of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's some training that you guys have learned over the last maybe decade on how to work with survivors? Because that was getting into this work. I've seen it shift over the last decade, but originally it was almost like the law enforcement was trained to look at the woman as the problem, or just she's a prostitute. And now it seems like it's shifting to, hey, she could very much be a victim. When did you start seeing that transition happen, and how do you train law enforcement to do that? Because I know that's one of the hardest parts of your job, that you can find somebody in that situation and there's no trust there.
That's a great question, and that's exactly what I was gonna say.
We just to pause, we've had people show up here almost like be on fentanyl at the office, almost dying in our parking lot. We have to call an ambulance. They're fine with the ambulance, but as soon as the police car comes behind the ambulance, they have a panic attack.
Yeah. You just said a super important thing, and let's start with that: trust. One of the things I found early on is if in that world, the trust that you gain from one person can spread throughout their circle. It's just word of mouth. You can trust this person. And the next one, hey, you can trust this person.
Got it.
And the next thing, your phone's ringing, and there's people that you don't even know who they are on the other line, and they're saying, hey,
she won't talk to me, but she says she'll talk to this person.
Yeah. And so trust is super important. Another important thing is, digressing back to our conversation earlier, compassion. But your compassion has to be unique, right? It has to be real. You can't fake it, right? You can't fake caring. You have to really care. Yeah. Because if you fake it, they're going to know.
Yeah.
They're going to know that you're faking, that you don't really care, right? It's just part of your job. You're just going through the motions. You have to truly care. If you truly care, that trust comes. If you truly care, you're truly there when they need you. And so, again, it travels throughout their circles. And it seems like from a law enforcement perspective, you get a lot more accomplished. Not just with identifying suspects and, getting cases adjudicated, getting bad people arrested, but also getting those women, children, and sometimes men, because I think we have this misperception that men aren't involved in human trafficking and some of these things, and young boys, when they are. Yeah. We get those people out of those bad situations. But it all starts with trust. One of the ways that I gained trust is, of course, I was an investigator, but I got out of the uniform. I looked like a normal person. And, I went out at, sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning when I first started, and I walked up and down Sprague. And, I introduced myself, and at the beginning, I got a lot of explicitives. I got called a lot of names. We don't want to talk to you. And then when they realize that, I say, hey, I'm not out here to arrest you. I'm not out here to give you a hard time. I'm here to help. And if you ever hear of anything that might help me get somebody out of a bad situation, and I'd write my name on a piece of paper instead of a business card so that, a pimp wouldn't see a police officer's or a deputy's, detective's business card.
Why is that important?
That's important because, again, a lot of these, and I'll say women, but again, it could be men, it could be children. They're in situations where they're dealing with some really bad and violent people. And these people are controlling just about every aspect of their life. If they see that they've been talking to a law enforcement officer, that can lead to some really bad treatment, including being beaten and sometimes worse. And I've got personal stories of, women that have, their pimps have seen them talking to a law enforcement officer for a couple of seconds. And what was that conversation about? And the next thing you know, they're getting beat really, really bad because the pimp thinks that they tipped them off or they said something that's going to get,
or they're going to
destroy
set
the
an
operation,
example
or they're going to set an example
to the other girls.
Yeah. And so, I would jot my name on just a piece of paper and just D with my number, tear it off and give it to him.
So because if the pimp finds that, he might think you're just a John.
Yeah,
or
just John. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. What are you seeing in our area? Because I think there's a myth out there that this only happens down at the border, or this only happens in really, 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 impoverished countries. I want to talk through that a little bit because I want you to speak to our community and I want you to speak to the fact that like, no, this is happening, and then maybe we can walk through like pimping, and then sex trafficking, and kind of explain how that can kind of lead from one to the next to the next. Because I think people are also kind of frustrated with the P. Diddy case, going like, why is he only getting hit with this and not with this?
Yeah. No, let's understand. Let's talk about trafficking just for a second, just briefly. Understand you got sex trafficking and then you have labor trafficking.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone in this area to think that we don't have a sex trafficking issue and we don't have a labor trafficking issue, because both occur here where we live. Specifically sex trafficking, which of course, as a detective, I was part of my my area that I investigated. One of the issues, and I can see why, from a societal standpoint, we may not, well, that's not a problem here. It's because even for law enforcement officers, it's extremely difficult to identify, or it can be, to the untrained eye. And so I remember when I was a sergeant, when I left the detective's office and, working those cases, I remember going back to patrol and within a couple of months realizing that I'm as a sergeant, I'm going to have to sit down and personally train my platoon on some of the things that they need to recognize that, hey, on this traffic stop at 1:32 in the morning, I might want to go into a little more depth other than the reason why, and maybe look for some things other than methamphetamine and heroin and, those things that they were looking for. Because what I found was I was backing officers or deputies on traffic stops, and I immediately saw the red flags, but they didn't.
Were you seeing the red flags because you were trained, or because
I was seeing the red flags because I was trained and I had,
Okay, so there is some training.
Yeah, there's some training. Yeah, but the problem is, it's not training, the typical training that most officers get. It's it's that specialized. If you're not specifically investigating human trafficking or child sexual exploitation, or going to a interdiction, drug interdiction, or an interdiction. I don't want to say drug interdiction, but interdictions, because interdiction, they teach you, all types of things that you're looking for. An addiction school where you're, looking for those red flags and those types of things, you'll miss it. Interesting story. I made a traffic stop out on I-90. This is before I went to the detective's office. I was a young corporal. I had just gotten promoted, waiting to see what they were going to do with me. They actually moved me out of investigations and they were going to move me back. So it was kind of a in-between time. I made a traffic stop out I-90 at Tyler, right at the Lincoln County line. And I'm talking to a guy, and in my head, I'm thinking, this guy has a car full of dope. I mean, all of the signs were there, right? And I started going into some interdiction questioning, and guy's from Texas. He's in a rental, and he looks at me and he laughs. And I said, what's so funny? And he says, you already missed it, brother. I said, I missed what? He says, you're looking for drugs. I don't transport drugs anymore. I say, oh, you don't anymore? No, that's old for me, man. All right. So he and I kind of told him I was from Texas, and we actually get into a super, for me, beneficial as a law enforcement officer, conversation where this guy, who was apparently a criminal, had did a lot of criminal things in his life, was a gang member out of Texas, coached me up on what I need to be looking for, not only in that world, but the important thing out of that conversation with him that I want to bring to this conversation is he told me he got out of transporting drugs and into transporting women. Now, why do you think he did that? He did that because transporting drugs, when you're driving drugs across the country and an interdiction, somebody that's specifically looking for drugs, stops you and they run a dog around that car, or they know what they're doing really well, and they get in their car, you're going to find drugs. It's easy to find. It's identifiable, right? 15 kilos of cocaine in a car. If you find it, you know that's cocaine. But he told me that if you get stopped and I get 2 or 3 girls in the car and I tell them these are my friends, the conversation ends there because most officers aren't going to go past that.
And they're trained not to talk.
And they're trained not to talk.
Wow.
He said a lot of his buddies who were gang members were moving away from selling drugs and moving into pimping. Because they knew, even in their own cities, they can drive around with 1 or 2 or 3 women in their car. They can have their bottom drive around with 1, 2, 3 women in the car. Between jobs, if they got stopped, sometimes there was no
That one's
questions
got to
asked.
be even more complicated to catch
Yeah.
because they train their bottom girl to go out and get other girls. So now
Yep.
you're just going to see
you're just
3 or 4 girls in a car. You're not even going to think about
You're
it.
not going to think about it. So think about that from a law enforcement standpoint. We talked about traffic stops earlier, right? I'm a young officer. I got 2 or 3 years on. You
Okay,
know,
you're getting me on the traffic stop
yeah.
now.
You see where I want. So it's a super hard.
Yeah.
It can be a super hard and complicated thing to even identify. Now you start getting into. We talked about, the massage parlors, and I mean, there's various different aspects and various different ways women are trafficked, and so you're getting into a world of where it can be extremely difficult to locate victims, get people to talk, identify, your players and things
The
like
reason
that.
I'm bringing that up is because we know it's happening. We're working with, I think we helped about 412 women last year. But one of the questions that you get asked oftentimes is like, well, I don't see this all over. I don't see a lot of arrests. I don't see this. And I'm going, it's very complicated to go to literally get somebody and then walk them through the entire process to get them for sex trafficking. And I think that's what you're kind of communicating is this can be very challenging. Whereas maybe the women are just reaching out to us directly because they want help and they want support.
Yeah.
And so that's normally what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of times people in the community go, that doesn't really happen here. But you're essentially saying, no, man, it does.
Yeah, it does. I think
I don't want to sensationalize it and make
No,
parents
no,
so
no.
scared, but but the reality is this is happening in our own community.
it's happening in your community.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen in schools. An example of that, I've seen, especially in the gang world, I've seen older gang members move younger relative gang members into our local schools, and those younger gang members were pimping out classmates, male and female, out of the school. So, I mean, this can be a very complicated world. I mean, like I said, you're talking, we've talked about massage parlors. There's the circuits, where the women are traveling from, city, the Spokane, Portland, Seattle, LA, Vegas, Salt Lake, where they're, I remember a specific group that were, the only thing they were doing were going over to the oil fields and back.
Dakota.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's such a complicated world. And so, which makes the investigations even that, much more challenging for law enforcement.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Be Bold for Jesus. If you've ever felt the urge to live out your faith more boldly, to step up and make an impact in your workplace, your church, or your community, this conference is for you. The Be Bold for Jesus conference is coming back to Spokane, Washington. It's a weekend packed with worship, encouragement, and practical tools to help you live out your faith confidently. You'll hear from incredible speakers who are living examples of what it means to be bold for Christ. Tickets are on sale now at BeBoldForJesus.org. That's BeBoldForJesus.org. Grab your tickets today and let's be bold together.
What would you say to parents that would, if you could, from what you're seeing of kids that are ending up being trafficked? Because I want to pause for a second, because I think a lot of people think, and we've had obvious cases where it's literally the parents selling their kids for drugs. We've had cases where it's parents selling their kids because they're in like the satanic occult and it's part of rituals. But more than not, it usually starts with what I'll call, which is pandering, which is, hey, you meet a girl. I love you. I care about you. We're dating for a while. Hey, I'm struggling with rent. Can you get on OnlyFans? Can you go to the strip club? Can you? They're encouraging them to get into sex work, and then it kind of transitions from pandering to pimping, which is, hey, you're making good money. What if I start setting this up? What if I start setting the meetings up? What if I'll take some of the money, I'll start pimping you out.
Yep.
And then it moves to sex trafficking, which is forced fraud or coercion, where maybe now the girl's going, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, hey, too bad. You are doing this. And if you don't keep doing this, you're not seeing your kid. So oftentimes, a lot of these guys might be sex trafficking somebody, but they're getting hit with pandering or pimping, and it's less time. But it's a lot harder oftentimes to prove a sex trafficking case, I think, without a willing survivor to be able to communicate that. And obviously, I would imagine force, fraud, or coercion, I would imagine force is the easiest to prove, but the other two could be kind of complicated. Is that one, why a lot of these guys are getting hit with the pandering and pimping instead of sex trafficking? And then two, knowing that's usually how this is working, what would you say to parents to keep their kids safe?
Yeah.
Because they're all thinking it's just somebody's rolling up, grabbing their kid, throwing them in a trunk, and that's not really what we're dealing with.
I really want to hit on that pandering.
Okay.
That's super important because I think Hollywood is somewhat sensationalized sex trafficking, and they believe. I think a lot of people believe that the victim is kidnapped, transported halfway across the country and the world, and they're forced to work in a strip club or on the streets in Taiwan somewhere. That's not always the case. Pandering can occur in different various ways. And so sex trafficking can be as simple as you having a girlfriend, and that situation you just, hey, we're having trouble paying rent, we're having trouble paying bills. Hey, why don't you post a couple of pictures on OnlyFans, and we'll start there, and then it moves on to just between those two people, that person who was considered a boyfriend selling their girlfriend, sometime for years, or forcing them into, selling themselves for money.
That's 60% of most all cases. That is the Romeo pimp game.
That is thank you.
And that's what we're dealing with most of the time. But people don't know that they watch Taken, Sound of Freedom, even. And I love that they did the movie. But it really makes people think a certain way.
It makes them think a certain way, and I think that parents sometimes they don't catch the red flags, right? And so for me, the things that I always, a saying that I always started with when I was conducting training with parents, teaching parents, presentations with parents on, child pornography, child sexual exploitation, human trafficking. I always started all of my presentations with this saying: prevention begins with awareness. You have to be part of your child's life. You have to be there. I don't care if they're 6 or I don't care if they're 25. You know your child. Be part of your child's life. Look out for the changes in behavior. Look out for the red flags. If your kids are in your house, if they're young, especially if we're talking about now, and we're talking about the internet these days, you have to know what they're doing.
And who they're talking to.
And who they're talking to. If you have young kids and they have a tablet or a computer, don't allow them to do things behind closed doors. If you do, check on them. Check their internet history. Use all those parental controls that iPhone and Apple devices, period, that they allow, that they have there for you to help you protect your kids, and all the parental controls for all digital devices. Know the capabilities, know how to use them. If you don't, ask another parent, Google it, use ChatGPT, do whatever you need to do to figure out, how can I protect my kids from sexual predators? I don't know what the number is now, but back when I was conducting technology-facilitated crimes against children investigations, there was a study that said at any given time, worldwide, there were 5 million, in every second that ticks by, there were 5 million sexual predators on the internet. Every second, worldwide, 5 million sexual predators on the internet. This was years ago, so I don't know what it is now, if it's changed.
Wow.
But with the change of technology, I would expect that number probably has gone up, right? And so,
So
parents need to, you have to be aware of what's going on. You have to, be involved.
You're like, be involved in their life, know what they're doing. We're seeing some parents, they have like a rule, like phone and laptop and iPad only in this room, in the living room, that's it. Some parents are saying, hey, I'm going to get smart and get a dumb phone. Just there has to be rules against this, because for me, my parents had me, my dad's like closer to 40. So when he had me, and when he grew up, it was a different time. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have all this stuff. So even for us, they would just let us go to the neighbors and hang out, because that's what they did. They were outside all the time doing their thing. But they didn't understand that, in the late 90s, when we're going over to their house, my neighbors' friends or, parents are watching porn. It's everywhere. Every house we're going to, we're looking stuff up.
Yep.
We're young guys, and there's no parental controls, because it's not that our parents didn't care; they just did not.
They didn't know.
They had
They
no
didn't know.
clue.
Yeah.
So now, with the phone and with all this stuff happening, and with people even moving away from selling cocaine to selling people, there has to be so much prevention and awareness. And parents really do need to know who they're talking to, and who their kids are talking to, and their kids need to know who they're talking to, because somebody could make a fake profile and you think you're talking to somebody, that you're not. You're talking to a 40-year-old dude, and you think he's a 16-year-old ripped football player. Yeah. And he's not. He's a 40-year-old guy.
He's a 40-year-old guy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But
look at some of the news stories.
So but he's still, he's a good-looking guy. So you add him, and now you're getting groomed and talked to, and he just figures out, hey, all her pictures are about horses. So now every conversation is going to be like, I love horses.
Yep.
He says everything that you want to hear. And then all of a sudden he's going to slowly try and get you to meet up and isolate you from your parents. Yeah. This is the stuff that we're seeing every single day. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, look at the news stories. I mean, when we just had the young lady who met the person online, thought they were a certain person and they weren't. And he goes over and murders her family, And so, there's a lot of things that parents can do. You have to talk to your kids. And the biggest thing is, again, like I said, prevention begins with awareness. You as a parent, you have to take it upon yourself to educate yourself on technologies. Whether we're talking about this or things as simple as, well, my kid wants an e-bike, I'm gonna buy my kid an e-bike, but we don't understand the classes of e-bikes and the dangers of e-bikes, and that's just another form of technology sometimes that we don't, we kind of take it lightly when we buy those things for our kids. And then kids end up getting hurt and or killed sometimes, on those things. So, computers, technology, there's no different. You have to talk to your kids. You have to be aware. You have to educate yourself. I remember like 2 or 3 days ago, my 6-year-old, my daughter, kept saying she was playing Roblox.
Oh, bro.
Yeah. And so she can only play it. She sits with me. She's 6. She plays
Isn't
it.
that sick though? They're going after these kids, and the kids are just trying to play a game.
Yeah, and she's sitting next to me like she's supposed to, and she's playing Roblox, and I'm watching, and she's talking, and she kept saying, "Oh, my friend is doing this, and my friend is doing that." And she said it about 5 times, and I said, "Your friend?" And I said, "How do you know they're your friend?" Well, he did this, and so we had that long conversation on what a friend is and who you can call a friend and who you can trust, and you can't meet someone on the internet and think they're your friend just because you don't really know who that is. And even at 6, I told her, it could be a guy that's older than dad that's bad and, that wants to hurt you. And so you have to continually have those conversations with your kids. And again, like I said, educate yourself on, the dangers, and be aware. And it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing, having the talks, watching, checking, and making sure our kids are safe. because if we just give them the technology and say, hey, be careful with it, and there's no follow-up, then we kind of set ourselves up for failure.
I think that's one of the biggest things too that my wife and I have noticed getting into this. We realize a lot of what we're seeing comes from the breakdown of the family. Could you, how important is it from your perspective of what you're seeing out there, and how often are you running into situations in kids that really, they just have a broken home? Like, how important is it for us to seek God and figure out how to stay married and stay healthy? And you know what I mean?
That everything that is involved with the foundation in the family is super important. You know, the parents, the values, the faith, all of that is super important. When you start to see a breakdown in that, again, I think that's where we start to see a majority of our failures in our society. And it's like a snowball. It starts to roll downhill from that family dynamic. And as kids, you know, the next stop is our educational system, the schools. And the schools are trying to deal with this, but there's still that breakdown in the family, and that snowball gets bigger. And then social services gets involved, but the snowball is big, and they're having a hard time. And then the kids start getting in trouble and other things. And then now the snowball's really big and it's still rolling downhill, and it gets to, you know, juvenile corrections. Then it gets to adult corrections. And then it gets, you know, and then law enforcement's involved in that. You know, there's at the bottom of that hill, there's only a few things, right? Incarceration of some sort and death. Everything down there and a few other things, but they're all failures.
Yeah.
They're not, there's nothing good at the bottom of that hill when that snowball gets down there. And so, you know, but there's no snowball there, and it all starts at the family, right? That's where that snowball starts. Either it gets bigger, or, you know, we're able to deal with it and we become productive members of society, and, you know, we're able to live really good lives and you know, good productive lives, and we're productive members of society. But again, I think that failure begins in our homes. Whether we're talking about two-parent and one-parent, I know I hear a lot of things about, you know, the breakdown in the family and the two-parent versus one-parent home. I know a lot of successful people that grew up in a one-parent home, whether it's mom or dad or whatever. I think the biggest part is you have to be involved. You have to be there for the kids, you know, and so.
Yeah. I love how you said that, and just the way that you communicated that, and the snowball effect is going to stick with me. I think that's a really good way to communicate that. One of the things that I've been processing is that even in this fight against human trafficking, there's some limits on law enforcement alone, right? You guys are really set up to get the bad guy, put him away, but arrests are really one part of the equation. What are some gaps that you might be seeing that are still existing when it comes to like helping victims? Because that's what we're trying to figure out how to help. And so it's always curious to see from your side of the coin, how important is it for nonprofit organizations like helping captives to do what we do in this fight?
I think, you know, dealing with human trafficking victims or helping human trafficking victims, it's no different than helping any other, victim who's in a bad situation, whether if we're talking about domestic violence, or we're talking about an alcoholic, or we're talking about a drug addict. I think one of the biggest variables there that will lead to either the success of, you know, trying to find them assistance or help and leading them to a positive outcome. The biggest variable there is the support system. Support systems are everything.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one of my duties when I was in detectives was monitoring and tracking registered sex offenders, and as part of that, I often sat on level lowering boards, which meant that a sex offender was attempting to get his or her level, like, you know,
Got it.
lowered
Yeah.
from, you know, maybe a 2 to a 1 or 3 to a 2. And one of the biggest things that was always one of the biggest things that was a variable there for us and for them was their support system. And I think it's no different here. One of the major issues I had when I was working with human trafficking victims was if they wanted help, where could I find the help?
Yeah.
And back, in the 2009, 10 or so when I was doing it.
Good luck.
Yeah, they would call. They wanted to get out of a bad situation. They wanted to talk. And about the only thing that I can do is talk to them about, a criminal case and try to prosecute a pimp and whoever else is involved. But that doesn't necessarily get them out of the situation. Yeah. And if we're talking about a multifaceted approach that needs to be taken. I mean, because you're talking about someone that more than likely is addicted to drugs.
More than likely, yeah.
And or alcohol.
More than likely, yeah.
More than likely. Who has developed mental health issues.
More than likely, yeah.
Right? Who needs all sorts of help because of the sexual, aspect of, being trafficked. And many other things.
Lots of physical needs.
The medical needs. So you're talking about a lot of things that needs to occur for that person to successfully navigate, those issues to get to a good place in life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where to start because no one wanted to help. One of the common things that I encountered back then was, well, they're not a domestic violence victim, so we don't know if we can't house them.
Or you just said 5 things. You're going, well, that's mental health.
It's mental, yeah.
No, they need a rape kit.
Yeah.
No, they also are high on. Well, back then it wouldn't have been fentanyl, but meth. And there's so much going on right now. It's just too hard.
Yeah, it's too hard.
And then if you throw in there, also there's spiritual abuse and all this other stuff going on.
I mean, and there was only 1 or 2 places at that time that I could take, someone. And the problem was I dropped them off and there was no assistance after that. So what do you think happened? They were right back in a bad situation.
And then they go back and then they get made of an example of in front of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's why it's so important
Yeah.
why it's so important what Helping Captives is doing and making sure that we're survivor led. They're meeting a survivor that's on the other side that's made it out, and really not just hoping that they get help, but being able to have mental health counselors on staff and case managers and care coordinators and survivors, because it's so complex. And also when somebody wants out, we don't get the luxury of just saying, hey, when you get sober, come see us.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
No.
So.
Yeah. And good luck with that.
Yeah. So
good luck with that. What is anecdotally speaking,
and trafficking doesn't happen 9 to 5
no,
Monday through Friday.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with needing to be able to do 24/7 intakes.
Yep.
You're needing a place that knows how to handle all of that, help them get stable, and then move them into recovery.
Yep.
So is that why when you're kind of you're kind of behind and endorsing a little bit of like the Freedom Center and why that needs to be up and running?
That is exactly why I'm endorsing the Freedom Center. Taking my past experience and those frustrations, and using those, as hopefully as an example and a go by as to why this is so important, is super important to me. It's important to me because I'd hate to waste that experience and just say, well, I've moved on. I've done a couple of things. I'm the chief now, and I don't need to be involved in that world. Without a doubt, that was probably when I worked technology-facilitated crimes against children, human trafficking, all those things I did as a detective. That was probably the most enjoyable thing that I've ever done. And I was a school resource officer. It was pretty close, but in both positions, I got to touch a lot of lives positively. And I would like to use, even though it may be a little dated now, and it's been a while, I don't think a lot of things have changed in that world. Maybe the drug of choice has changed.
The text changed.
The technology's changed a little bit. Maybe Backpage is not there anymore, and they're using some other web pages and some other ways to get customers and Johns and things like that. But the world is still the same. The pimps are still either guerrilla pimps or not. The girls are either getting beaten or finessed, and the world is still the same. And they still need assistance and they need help. And there are women and boys and men and young ladies out there who are in that world that not only need help, but they're seeking help, but they don't know where to go, or they don't have a place to go.
Or you're getting them at 2:00 in the morning, and you can't do intakes at a residential neighborhood safe house at 2:00 in the morning.
No,
so
you can't.
We need a place that can be open 24/7.
24. Yes.
Yeah.
And the great part about that is, and I know you can testify to this, is having a one-stop location is so beneficial, because you know how difficult it is to go sit with a young lady at Sacred Heart for 3 hours. And then you got to try to figure out where the next place is you got to go to sit for 2 or 3 hours and hope that they can help.
Yeah.
And then you may have to go somewhere else or contact someone else after that, because you're dealing with medical and mental health. And you're dealing with all of these things, and you have to go to all of these entities to try to get help and things accomplished for someone. If you just had a facility
or even a number where we're in a situation and we can't drop them off, we have to evac them immediately to a hospital, but they're having a really hard time talking to us. Can one of your advocates meet us at the hospital so we can hand them off to somebody that knows what they're doing?
Yeah. And so it's super important, and I'm super excited, and I hope it comes to fruition. And
we're making some good progress.
Good.
We are. And I think there's other aspects too when you look at with us and the Freedom Center and helping captives, but then you also have, I just want to throw it out there, be remiss if I didn't. You've got like the mission, like this mission with my buddy Cal Webb. You wouldn't have been able to, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like even that sting that you guys were able to do in Liberty Lake, it was mostly funded by them.
Yes.
So even that is them in the fight, raising funds to try and get the funding to the police department through grants so that you can do things like this.
Yeah.
So it's not just, we can't fight this only through an LE or law enforcement only viewpoint.
No. And I don't want, one of the biggest things here is, and I want people to remember this, is that it's going to take everyone's, and when I say everyone, it's going to take a group effort from law enforcement and social services and mental health and our local hospitals and AMR, and there's so many people. It's going to take a group effort. Everyone has to be on the same page. What we can't have is this almost smooth process, and then an ambulance say, "Well, we're not going to transport."
Yeah,
because that just threw a wrench in it.
Yeah.
And so
I know we just raised millions of dollars up in the Freedom Center, but we're not really going to take.
Yeah, we're not really. Yeah, and it's like, okay, we were almost there.
Yeah,
we were almost there.
Yeah.
If there's any hitches in the giddy up in this,
someone dies off.
Yes, exactly. It's going to take everyone understanding how important a system is here. A system. Can't have a weak link in the chain.
Yeah.
It's going to take a system. And so, but I think your organization is doing a great job getting everyone on board. I love the conversations that are occurring. And again, I think our community knows just how important this is. And again, I think, I don't think, I pray that, that again, this all comes to fruition and we're able to help people. Because ultimately, from a law enforcement standpoint, I mean, are prosecutions important? Yes. But what's more important? That person. And getting that person out of the situation, getting that person the help they need. If a prosecution never occurs, if we're talking about
Man,
that
you're
an individual
unique in that way.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think it's important for you to be training people, because oftentimes law enforcement, that they're trained to put the bad guy away. They want to. They roll up on a situation. This girl's been beaten, and they want it so bad that they almost don't have they forget that this person first needs to feel safe and have a place of safety before they're even willing to open up. Yeah. They've just been through so much abuse. And so it's interesting that you just said that even if we can't get a prosecution, the person's life is so much more important.
Yes.
That alone right there should be talked about and trained, I think. Because if you're looking through this lens, oftentimes you push away the potential for somebody to even feel safe to
open up. Yeah. And they have to feel safe to open up. Yeah. And I've seen it. I've seen.
Then we need to be able to have a place for them to feel safe and get healing and get stable and get through recovery, because they might not open up until 6 months down the road because it could even take that long for them to even feel safe, Yeah. I love this, man. I love the conversation, and I love that you really have an understanding and you have a heart for this, and our community has a heart for this, and the law enforcement understands the need for this. And we've had multiple conversations over a long period of time to really figure it out and dial in exactly what the community needs, so that we're not just building something because we think it's a good idea. We're actually building something that's actually going to make an impact and make a difference. And so I really appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate your heart. And then the last question I have for you is very simple. It's if a young Chief Simmons was listening to this, what would you tell him?
Continue with the good fight. There's been times where I've wondered how much longer I'm going to do this. I just entered year 26 this month, and this job is taxing psychologically and physiologically. It is the trauma that you experience as a law enforcement officer. I don't know if the general public really understands the true extent of what you go through, mentally and physically over the years, but it takes a toll on you. And entering year 26, I was like, I am tired. But it's funny because every time I think about planning a retirement date, I love cop shows, right? I watch First 48. I watch, all the true crime television shows, not because I'm a cop, because they're entertaining, right? I watch them for the entertaining factor. Sometimes I forget that I'm a cop when I'm watching them, right? But more often, at the end of one of those shows, I hear a divine voice talking to me, and that voice says, that's exactly why I cannot have you walk away from this job. There are people out there that need your help. And it may not be directly, but under your guidance and your leadership and your people and the people that all of your comrades in law enforcement, that's why I can't let you walk away from this now. And so if I could send myself a message, 5 years ago when I was appointed, when I was blessed enough to get this job, I think I would tell myself, hey, there's going to be a point where you want to give up. Like, you're tired, you want to walk away. You're ready to go, stand in Walmart and say, hey, welcome, and let me check your receipt or whatever. You just want to walk away and find another job. That God is not going to let you walk away, because there's still a fight to be fought. And you still have to be the voice for people sometimes who can't have a voice for themselves. And there's still really bad people and there's evil out there that, you know, you have to address as part of my plan for you in this world. And so that's the message that I would, you know, send myself if I could.
Man, I love that. Thanks for taking the time to come out and hang with us and talk to us and share this with the community. And I will promise to do my best to only speed in Texas.
Thank you. Yeah, don't speed through Liberty Lake, my guys.
You don't speed through Liberty Lake. I'm gonna get caught.
Yeah. They like to write tickets.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, I want you to make sure to like and share and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We're grateful for every listener. Your support helps us keep sharing stories of faith, hope, and real transformation. And if this episode encouraged or challenged you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. If you'd like to support victims of sex trafficking and be part of the fight for freedom, visit helpingcaptives.org to learn more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.